We know that women have very specific financial challenges. We're not going to talk today about the research around pay gaps, women-headed households, or the higher likelihood of women to spend their money on household emergencies. We're rather going to take and use those facts as the starting points to explore what women should be aware of in their relationships when it comes to money. And to help me do that, please welcome to EBNet Stream Rita Cool, a certified financial planner and head of individual consulting strategy at Alexforbes.
Hi, Natalie. I hope you're well.
I'm very good. Thank you, Rita. Okay, so let's jump right into it. We know that money is often a very touchy subject in relationships. When, in your opinion, should couples start discussing money?
Well, definitely before you start moving in or getting serious. I know some people think it's a very touchy, taboo subject, and that, oh, somebody's just dating you for the money and all of those things. So I'm not going to raise it the first time I go out with you, but if you're going to start sharing expenses or considering to move in together, you have to have the money talk. And definitely, if you're considering getting married and you have not had the money talk yet, money is one of the biggest reasons why marriages fail, because you haven't addressed these things. You cannot just ignore it and then hope it's going to get better and that it's going to be magical and everything's going to work out. You need to know the person and how they feel about money, how they were raised about with money, because all of those emotions around money can seriously affect the love that you have and erase the love that you have in a relationship.
But you're right, it's a very uncomfortable topic. I mean, I'm thinking about a first date scenario or even a fifth or sixth date. The big question is who pays the tab? And that already is almost the first money conversation that a couple will have. But in your experience, what is the most problematic issue that couples or women encounter when it comes to money in relationships?
I think they don't always take responsibility. Look, scenarios are changing, generations are changing. So very
Mm.
often you mention the dating, who pays. If I'm going to go on a date with you, I will expect to pay for my own dinner because that is just fair. If I'm working and I get a salary, why must I expect my partner to pay for everything? Just because he or she have a job, why must they suddenly pay for everything? You cannot expect that. You should fight on an equal foot if you want to be treated as an equal. So, and that starts with something simple like when you date. So when you are as a woman in a relationship, you cannot just hand over the responsibility of your financial freedom to your partner. You have to know what is going on. You have to take responsibility. You have to have your own goals with that. You cannot see your relationship as your financial planning because things happen. Life happens, whether you like it sometimes or not. And if you did not take your own responsibility for your own financial freedom, you're going to get stuck because you cannot be assured that everything is going to stay the same forever. So I think that is something really, really important for women to look forward to. You need to know what is going in and out of your bank account, what is being spent, all of those nice things. You cannot just absolve and say, sorry, but I'm the woman in this relationship. I'm going to sit back.
Mm. Having said that, and we know that kids do come into the equation, particularly in marriage kind of scenarios. What are your thoughts around the financial impact of the stay at home and look after the children role that women have traditionally taken on?
So personally, if you want to stay at home and that is the arrangement with your partner, then stay at home. There is absolutely nothing wrong with it. There is a right and a wrong for every situation. You cannot judge a person for deciding to do that. But if you're going to be doing that, you have to keep in mind that it could be 2 years, it could be 5 years, it could be 10 years that you are out of the work environment. If you're going to go into this as a couple, you have to continue for that 2 or 5 or 10 years you have to continue with your retirement savings so that you do not stop that. The biggest problem with a stay-at-home situation is that very often there is no money to fund that. And whose retirement funding gets affected? The women's, because there's no formal employment. Although every single mother who has stayed at home and who has raised children will agree with me that it is a full-time job. You're not sitting back and just drinking tea with your friends the whole time. So you have to make sure that part of the family budget is saving towards retirement for the person who stays at home. And the problem that stay-at-home period causes is that gap. Say it's just 2 years that you stay at home, that gap in contributions very often causes a negative effect over in the long-term outcome of the women's retirement funding. So you have less when you get to retirement. Not only that, women on average are probably younger than their spouses, which means that when the spouse retires, the wife decides to maybe take early retirement as well at the same time as the husband. Now she's got less money, she's saved for a shorter period of time, and as a woman, you are statistically going to live longer than a man. So you have to make that lower amount of money last for longer. So now you think, but how can a 2 year stay at home affect your retirement? And it is because you now need to save more to catch up, save faster, save more aggressively potentially, and you maybe go back into a job where there's a one size fits all contribution rate, men and women alike, but women who had that break might actually need to not contribute 15%, which is the standard for the fund, but actually needs to be given the opportunity to save 17% when she does get back to saving. So enjoy it. If it's right for you, it's right for you. I don't think I'll be able to stay at home with my even with my kids, but yeah, you have to think of those things to get you back on track when you do start working again.
And exactly in line with that, I'm going to ask you an on-the-spot question. Marriage. Um, in community, out of community, or with accrual? Your thoughts?
Yes, it depends. So people have this idea that if you don't get married in community of property, that you might love the person less for some reason because you're asking for some kind of antenuptial contract. That is definitely not so. I'm married out of community of property with accrual specifically because when we sat down and we discussed our money goals, the likelihood that myself or my husband would start a business was still on the table. And then I don't want to be held responsible for debts that he has in his company if I'm married in community of property. So you have to take all of those things into account as well. It does not matter which one you have, but you should have the discussion about what's going to work best for you. And that's also traditional marriages, for example. The only thing that I could suggest there and recommend there is whatever you do, make sure that you have it registered. Because I've seen so many times that especially with traditional marriages, you're not 100% sure where you are in the process, and that's where the uncertainty comes in. And if something does happen to the relationship, you are not, you and suddenly the family and the media, I've seen some very high profile relationships break down in the media, and this has happened, this wasn't done, etc., etc. And then, unless you have that piece of paper that says that this marriage is registered, it can become quite difficult.
Before we get on to what could be a controversial question, have you found that women who do raise these issues with their partners and spouses, have you found, and you perhaps are counseling them together financially, have you found the partner being willing to have these conversations?
I think if the partner is not willing to have the conversation, then you should ask more questions because then there's a bigger problem in the relationship. It could be that that partner has something to hide, And for example, debt. Very big red flag that you have to address before you get married, especially, for example, if you're going to get married in community of property. If the person has a very big credit card debt, or have been sequestrated or something like that, that is the conversation you should have. And you cannot go into any relationships with your eyes closed and hoping it's going to get better. So really, if there is a reluctance to discuss money, then it should raise other questions about why is this reluctance to discuss it.
I'm so glad you used the term red flags, because it was going to be my final question as we wrap up. Advice for women. They're dating, they're madly in love, it's Valentine's Day, he picked up the check. What are the red flags that women should look out for when it comes to their personal financial planning and their relationships that they may be in?
So, as I mentioned, the debt, the reluctance to discuss something, and I think that if you're going to be in a relationship, especially if you're new in a relationship and you're starting to feel out, and you don't have to disclose everything. You don't have to show everything either, all your cards immediately, but you should share enough to at least understand where the other person is coming from. So for example, for me, if the person told me they have this type of job and they drive that type of car, or spending this amount of money every time that you go out, that for me is a red flag. Where's this money coming from? Are they creating more debt? Is this the type of lifestyle that could become a problem for us when we are in a formal relationship, that I want to save for a holiday or for a deposit on my house, but my partner is continuously spending and doesn't think that there's ever going to be a rainy day in the future? You should be on the same page with that type of thing. And then when you are in a relationship already, as I said, you should take responsibility for your finances. So just keep an eye out if you start seeing accounts coming through, and don't disregard that email that suddenly says, but this is owing, and you thought it was paid, because it can seriously affect you, especially if you're married in community of property, and suddenly before you know it, you don't even know that this debt is happening, or this expenditure is happening. You can land in serious financial difficulties. And gambling, gambling is one of the biggest financial drags in the South African economy, for example. And it might seem harmless at some point in time, but a lot of people struggle with that. It costs a lot of people a lot of money. It costs it costs your financial dream sometimes, because a lot of people have to pay the gambling debt instead of investing and getting to the house and all the nice things going forward. So those are the type of conversations that I would have with my new partner.
Rita, thank you. Thank you for taking the time to share your experiences with us. It's such an important conversation, and hopefully a little bit of the nuggets you've shared with us today will give women more confidence to raise these issues with their partners before it's too late. And I look forward to some future chats we have around this topic. Thank you.
It's a pleasure. Me too. I'm looking forward to it. Thanks.